The views and opinions expressed on Around the Town are entirely those of the host, guest, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the faculty, staff, and students at Elizabeth City State University or ECSU Radio and Television Services.
Welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Hez Brown. And now your host, Hezekiah Brown.
Good evening. Wow, this is Around Town with Hez Brown. Yes, we're back again. We're back again to bring you the news that you can't get anyplace else, and along with information. And remember, this is 89.9 FM on your radio dial. We air on the first and third Wednesday of each month. Now, let me just, as I said again, I often try to give you a few nuggets about how to resolve conflict. And conflict is something that we don't talk about too much. We don't talk about enough. And there's so much of the violence is going on around us. And I think that we just really not addressing the whole idea of how to solve problems. And I am so saddened, and I offer condolence to the family. A young man was shot and killed on Grice Street here in Elizabeth City. And this is, folks, I am saddened by this because we can be better and we certainly can do better. But here, think about this. It's not only the person who was killed, but think about the impact that it had on the family of the young man who was killed. And what about the shooter? There are two families that is destroyed. It's just not the person who died. There are all kind of extensions of family, sisters, brothers, aunt, cousins, and all that's impacted by this. So we ought to try to think about a little bit of compassion, because I think that one of the things, if we had compassion, this wouldn't happen. Because the shooter would know that, well, wait a minute, if I hurt this person, that it's going to have some impact on the entire family, and maybe they would be reluctant to do that. So we're saying to you is that I am hope that we are calling out. We're not calling to arms because that's what's affecting people, but I want to put this out here today. I want to say to this community that's listening, we are going to have to. We are forced to try to get the African American community involved in these young men's lives. We don't have a choice. We don't have an option. If we don't get them involved in these young males' life, it's not going to be any of our daughters to marry. So I'm just asking you, I'm going to give you my home telephone number. And if you are listening to this program and you want to get involved in doing something to try to save our young men, I'm going to give you a number. My number is 252-335-2439. Now, I know you wasn't sitting at the radio with a pen and pencil, so I'm going to give it to you again. The number is 252-335-2439. It is time for us to get away from the television. Football season is almost over. I know basketball season is coming, but it's time for us to take our kids back, take them from the streets, and no one can do it. Building more jails is not going to do it. Hiring more policemen is not going to do it. Putting more metal detectors in the school is not going to do it. We have to start to deal with the young people on many times a one-on-one basis and to convince and talk to them and be with them and show them there's a different way. Okay, so much for that. But I am really and truly excited today. And I'm excited because, I don't know if this is on. I am excited today because we have a person in the studio today that is what I call an unsung hero. It's two of them now. This is Judge J.C. Cole. We're going to have him the first Wednesday in February celebrating unsung heroes. The third Wednesday, we're going to have his wife, who was also a district court judge and a U.S. attorney. So we're going to talk about the legal family. And not only that, but we'll have some other things we can share to you about this great family. But I'd just like to welcome the Honorable J.C. Coles to Around Town with Hez Brown. Good evening, Judge Cole.
Good evening, Dr. Brown. It's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to be sitting here with you. And getting involved in these types of discussions.
Well, we're certainly glad to have you because there are a number of things that we're going to talk about today that is certainly important to the community. But we have your name. We know who you are. And they call Judge Cole the hugging judge. And we like that because that shows a lot of compassion and feeling for people. And Judge, you are married, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. And your wife is?
Janice McKenzie Cole.
Janice McKenzie Cole.
Yes, sir.
All right. And you have children?
Yeah, we have 2 daughters who both just happen to be attorneys.
I want you, audience, do you hear that? I said not he. They have 2 daughters, and they both are attorneys. And let me just stop for a moment there, Judge, and say, well, how did they become attorneys? I mean, you had to do something because most young people, they want to do something different than what their parents do. What did you do so they would become attorneys? What was the key?
I'm just not sure. When they were growing up in high school and college, neither one of them had any interest in law. Taking a step back, this is a second career for me. I was a law enforcement, or I was a federal agent in New York. Yeah, for 12 years. And so they have always been a part of that. You know, I was stricter because of the things that I saw and the things that I dealt with. And they would always say to me, Dad, I'm not one of those criminals that you see on the street. I'm not one of those criminals that you deal with in the courtroom, But I said, you're still mine.
Right.
And, you had to follow our rules. And but I think because of that attitude that they resisted that until they saw the advantage of following that path.
Judge, and one of the things that I do in terms of advising young people about careers, and I hear so many say, well, I want to go to school and I want to get my master's, I want to get a PhD. And I don't think anything is wrong with that.
You're
but it costs
right.
almost the same thing to become a lawyer.
It does.
And once you become a lawyer, you can practice any kind of law you want to. You know what I mean? You don't have to be confined to one discipline.
Exactly. And it opens up so many doors to you. You don't have to be in the courtroom. You don't have to be in the boardroom. There are so many other types of ways that you can use that degree. Can't think of it right off the top of my head. The folk that help people with social issues, legal services, so many others that are available to young folk. And the good thing about it is that no matter what you do, you can help people with that law degree. Absolutely.
And, sometimes, they have to do some things in order to prepare because you don't just walk in to law school. There's some things that you have to do to get there.
And it's more difficult now. I have a passion for dealing with young folk. I was a district court judge for 15 years. And the last 5 years, I was the only judge that did juvenile court here in our 7-county judicial district. Chowine, Gates, Pasquotank, Perquimans, Camden, and Currituck. And I was there for 5 years. I was the only one that did juvenile court. And I saw that you had to reach out to those young folk and have them understand, first of all, why they got to where they are. And then secondly, what they needed to do to get their lives turned around. And I'd had practice with my daughters. And the other thing about that, those kids, they weren't adults. They made mistakes. I didn't get to where I was because I didn't make mistakes. I made mistakes. So, you have to have an open mind to get with them. And those kids can sense when you're serious. And you work with them. And at the end of each case, I would make that child come up to the bench and hug me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I didn't wait for the juvenile court counselors to go to the schools to see how they were performing. I would tell them, I'll show up at that school myself, and they better not have anything but good things to say about you. But it's that type of intimate interaction with the child that can generate the feeling to want to do better and listen to their parents and listen to those teachers.
Let's just, Judge, where did you grow up?
I grew up right here in Elizabeth City, the Weeksville section, all the way to the bottom of Weeksville. And, I didn't have role models. And my dad dropped out of school in the 3rd grade, and my mom the 8th grade, and yet their son is sitting here, a Superior Court judge that can hold court in any county in the state of North Carolina.
Well, how many siblings did you have?
It was 6 of us. I was the oldest of 6. And our parents were strict. They didn't accept excuses, and that's what parents, I think what I see this day of time is a lot of them, they accept excuses. If you start out making excuses, you're going to have to continue to make them. So I was not allowed to make excuses about why I did not get good grades, why I did not complete this chore, why I did not obey this teacher. There were consequences that followed when I didn't do those things.
Yeah, what was life like? Did you work on the farm?
I worked on the farm every day that I was not in school, from the time I could walk almost. And I hated summers because summertime for me was working in those doggone fields. I wanted to go to school every day that I could. Working out there in that hot sun, working out there. I mean, this time of the year when you're sitting out cabbages and your fingers are frozen and you're trying to stick those things in the ground, and oh my God, no. Some of my friends wanted to learn how to drive tractors and all that type of stuff. I had absolutely nothing to do with it because I just wanted to prepare myself to escape that lifestyle.
But that's really, it's bringing me to the next point, I'm just saying, and I hope that we can have some young folks listening, because some people feel that you came from the other side of the street, that
No.
everybody. But you know what it is like to work in the field. You know what it is. You know what hard times are.
No silver spoon here, my brother.
So what inspired you to be a lawyer?
Actually, to go back, when I finished undergrad, I went to Livingstone. And, my degree is in mathematics. And I did work at the Coast Guard base here in Elizabeth City for sometime during the summer, sometimes during the school year. And I wanted to be a pilot. And I joined the Naval Reserves, completed undergrad. And when I did that, I went into flight training school down at Pensacola. And I was not successful. I had to drop out because I had sickle cell traits.
Okay.
So then I moved back home, but during that time, you could either teach, preach, or be an undertaker. I couldn't teach because I didn't have patience. Mm-hmm. I couldn't be an undertaker because I was scared of dead folk. And I couldn't preach because at that time I wasn't living right.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up moving to New York and living with my brother. And I ended up getting that job because one of the guys there who lived up there knew that I had my degree, and he worked with the Postal Service. He came to me and he says, Carlton, they've got these positions. You ought to go and try for it. And I did, and I got lucky. And I got hired, and I ended up doing that for 10 years there.
And you was a federal agent, you say?
Postal inspector.
Postal inspector.
And I did work all up and down the whole East Coast in undercover capacity, and it got to the point I just got tired of it. And it was that doing that work that I was in the courtroom, And I saw lawyers, and I said, I can do that.
Wow.
I can do that. So when I left and moved back to North Carolina, the first thing I did, my wife and I, we talked about it, and we made the decision that we should go for it.
Yeah.
And it was a joint decision. And I got admitted to North Carolina Central Law School and completed that. And I was 34 years old when I went to law school.
Yeah.
34, and finished that, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, as I said again, sometimes I was listening to a young lady give a presentation a few weeks ago about, as a young person, teaching them to dream.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To say dream, there's nothing wrong with dreaming about
Exactly.
where you want to go and what you want to do, whether or not and I think that, and I think about what you say now in terms of what you originally wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people get turned around
Exactly.
because that goal that they set for themselves, sometimes the goal is high. And because they don't make it, they end up dropping out of school or going doing something different. But you dropped up, not dropped out.
No, well, you have to. When I was working in district court and I was in the schools, I would always tell these kids, you have to look beyond the window. You have to look beyond the window. You can't just sit and look at the walls that surround you.
Yeah.
If you're going to be successful in life, you're going to have to be able to see through that window and beyond. Mm-hmm. And that's how you do it.
Yeah, because what I'm saying is Judge, is that I recall when you were appointed as the Superior Court Justice. Mm-hmm. And I remember that distinctly and will never forget it. And I looked at what the governor at that time appointed you when she talked about you as an individual. It made me feel proud, Mm-hmm. She talked about a good family man. She talked about integrity. She talked about honesty. She talked about hard work. And in the press release that she put out, those were the things that she said about you. Yes. And I know that have to make you feel good because you'll never forget it, and I'll never forget it because I lived through other people who were successful mm-hmm. in a sense.
And that's a key, being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Being able to do that. My mom made me read, made all of us read.
Yeah.
And even though we were poor and lived, we had no running water. We had to pump water for cooking, cleaning, and bathing. We had an outhouse. We had wood for heating and all of that stuff. But she never allowed us to think or look or act like we did not belong or have things. We always she always worked with us to have a positive outlook. Mm-hmm. And part of that came from reading books. She would make us read every night. And that would be in addition to any homework that you had to do because, I think she was smart enough and she was visionary enough to know that, like you said, you could live your life through other people.
That's right. Yes. And, I just, Judge, and I think that you said it all because I believe that our kids should learn to read. The thing that bothers me more than anything when I hear kids say, oh, I hate reading. And you hear so many of our students say they hate reading. Oh, I don't like science, And these are the things that you have to do. See, I say to them, if you learn to read and comprehend, it helps you in English, science, and math.
Everything you do.
That's right.
Everything you do. Yes,
so,
sir.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to just point those things out, and I want to just go to you now. You originally you was a federal inspector for the Postal Service, and then you went to law school.
Yes, sir.
And then you became a lawyer.
Yes, sir.
Right. And then did you have a law practice?
I did. I did a criminal law practice for 7 years before I got elevated to the bench.
Yeah. And so you was first appointed as a district court judge?
I was appointed and then ran and got elected. Got appointed in appointed in 93 and elected in 94.
Yes. And so you served as a district court judge for a period of time, and then in 2009?
15 years. In 2009, Governor Perdue appointed me. One of our, it came about because one of our, we have two resident Superior Court judges in this judicial district, and one retired.
Right.
And she appointed me to fill that vacancy.
And then in 2010, you ran.
Got elected.
Got elected.
Yes.
And
I've been, let me interrupt. I've been truly, truly blessed because when I got elected in 94, I have not had another contested election. I had to run, as a district court, you had to run every 4 years.
Right.
And I have not had opposition since the first time out.
And then, because I'm saying 2018, you ran, you was unopposed.
Unopposed.
And I just want to say this to the audience, about Judge Cole. Those things that Bev Perdue said about him when she appointed him as Superior Court Justice, all are true. And that's when you have to run for office, that is a position that is somebody always out there wanting to challenge you. So people are either reluctant to challenge you because you're doing a good job or because they know they can't win. So I don't know which one, but the two of them. But it's almost unheard of for individuals to run unopposed for political positions in this climate now.
Yes.
And so I just want to congratulate you and applaud you because the reason people don't run against you, they know that they can't beat you.
I don't know about that. Well, it's all about being, in my mind, treating people the way that you want to be treated. And I don't know where we would talk about this, but, my judicial philosophy is one that, you treat people the way that you want to be treated. So when I am sitting there in my black robe behind the bench and I'm looking down at that young man, more often than not a young black man, in that orange prison garb, that in God's eyesight, we're both the same. So just because I'm sitting there as a judge, and just because that person is standing there in prison, incarcerated, does not give me the right to be disrespectful to him or her or whomever that person may be. I have to treat them the same as I would want to be treated if the situation were reversed. And I deal with my attorneys that appear before me the same way. I treat them with respect. I demand respect and dignity, but also I think you got to give it first. I'm a firm believer that, like Jesus said, you got to wash some feet. You got to wash the feet. You can't expect people just because of your position to cater to you. You can't do that. Absolutely. And I think that's my belief anyway.
I call that the humanistic approach to judgeship. And because I'm just saying that there's so, as you pointed out, there's so many individuals who get in positions and they use the power that they have to belittle people,
No.
So, but I know that, and I haven't been in your court. I intend to do that sooner or later, just to come in and see. Yeah.
First week in February, I'll be here.
When?
First week in February.
First week in February, you'll be in the courtroom here, and I will try to do all I can just to come to see how you function. But by the way, Judge, I don't know if you know that I operate the same as a judge.
Yes.
I just don't have the robe.
Yes.
I've been doing arbitration for 36 years.
Yes, sir. I'm familiar with that.
I'm a member of the National Academy of Arbitrators, which is the top organization, professional organization within the arbitration field. And I've been a member of that since 2008. So I know sometimes. And so one of the things that I say to people sometimes is that, and I'll say this to you, that you can't fool the judge. You can't fool the arbitrator.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because we've been around so long, and in order to get where we are, we've heard all kind of lies. We've heard all kind of stories. And we know that you can't fool us. And I think I just want to drop that out there. Yeah. So if any of the young folks are listening, don't come before Judge Cole and think you can fool them. It doesn't work like that.
No.
Now, Judge, let me just throw something else at you, and maybe you can help in this. I know the recidivism rate for young people going to jail, male and female, is about 60 to 65%. Do you have any thoughts on what we can do to reduce that rate? We're never going to totally eradicate it, but what can we do as a community to try to reduce that?
Well, one of the things that I think we need to do, we need to get our churches and religious institutions more involved. Have them work with these kids, and we need to have more folk. To me, it's important that you reach that child at a young age. Mm-hmm. So, go into the schools and read to these kids. Let them know that you care. Let them know that you care before they get to the court system. Because oftentimes, if they get to the court system, it's just the beginning. Yeah. So we have to find things. We need more mental health resources out there for kids. We need more counseling services for these young kids, because they're growing up in this is a cold, cruel environment that they're growing up in, unlike where I grew up on the farm and out in the country. Where people, you were actually literally raised by a village. Right. Mm-hmm. It's not like that now. These kids, they have so access to this social media, and they grow up so fast. And my granddaughter's 5 years old, will be 5, and she takes my phone and uses it. I can't do stuff on there.
You're right.
And I see that not just with her, but all these young kids. They come into this world knowing how to be tech savvy, and I am technologically challenged. And
that's two of us.
Our generation. So we've got to have, as a community, we've got to be more open to working with these children and not just turning our backs on them. Getting them involved, taking them to church. Right. If their parents don't want to go, ask the parents to let them go with you. Right. And, I don't know when our legislature is going to understand that they're going to have to restore some of these services that have been cut, especially as it relates to mental health. Because you can't lock up and don't even mention the opioid crisis. You can't lock all these folk up. They are better served by providing them with counseling and mental health services rather than throwing them in some jail cell where they serve their little bit of time. They're going to come right back, and they're going to be recidivists and come right back into the system.
Right. The sad part about it is that I think the whole philosophy of our country has to change, because we are almost reluctant to invest in people. We invest in building more jails. We invest in putting preventative measures. We put resource officers, policemen in school, instead of teaching kids in school how to resolve disputes. We just have gotten to a point now where we think that everything has to do with power.
Yeah. You mentioned, conflict resolution. We need more of those services to help kids learn how to resolve conflicts short of some type of physical engagement or short of shooting. That's a very important thing that we need to have our communities engage in. Have those kids. I just finished last week in Tarboro attempted murder trial, and these kids were in their 20s, and the jury came back with guilty verdicts, and they go into jail. I've got a murder trial next week in Gates County, mm-hmm. And it's sad to see these things. These kids don't understand that you got to go out there and work. Mm-hmm. If you want to have, just take from other folk. And don't even get me started on.
No, but I want you. I'm just saying to you that we are at a crossroad, not only in North Carolina, but Judge, I travel all over the country still.
Right.
And it's no different. Mm-hmm. It's no different if I go to New York. It's no different if I go to New Jersey. It's no different if I go to Charlotte. We all in the same boat.
Yes.
And the problem is we're not looking at how to address the problem. We're going around the problem.
Ignoring it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we just have to find some way and some method mm-hmm. to try to find ways and means to save some of our kids. Because like I said, the young ladies Some of them have problems, but not to the same degree that men. And we have another phenomenon that's out here now. And I don't know how to solve that problem. I know how to solve a lot, but that one I don't. 71% of the kids in our community, in the African American community, are born into single-family home. And it's no longer what you and I knew as a family years ago, Exactly. And this sometimes single parents, unfortunately, have 3 and 4 kids, and they're trying to deal with that. And those same kids come to school with someone who don't know how to raise kids, someone who has no skill in raising children, and they bring those same ills into the classroom. And
when they do that, the teachers have to spend their time working with the child whose parent didn't read to them that night, who didn't make sure they had a good dinner, who did not make sure that they went to bed at a designated time, as opposed to the single parent child or in a family that does not have an true understanding of what it's going to take to have their children to be successful. That, you have to enforce those types of things. And when they get to that school, to sit there and absorb what the teacher has to give, and rather than being the disruptive one that causes the teacher to take away their time to deal with that.
Right. Okay, Judge, I think that we are getting close to time to end this program, but this is such a pleasure talking to you. And I just one last question. Now, do you have any desires to move up to the appellate division in the court system?
I have absolutely no desire to move any further up. I've been privileged to serve as a judge here in the state of North Carolina and its great citizens. District court, I never, one of the questions, I never had any clue that I would be not only a lawyer, but then after being a lawyer, a judge. So it has been an absolute privilege to be in that position. And again, you have to surround yourself with folk or come in contact with folk that can help you get into those types of positions, whether it's in law, whatever it is you have, you want to move in. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Again, so this is Around Town with Hez Brown, and you just heard from the Judge J.C. Cole, who have given us a little bit of history about him and why he got there. And one of the things that I should point out, that he proved to us in this conversation that one can be anything they want to be. He talked about working in the field. A lot of kids now are reluctant to go to school, but he said, I'd rather go to school than to work in the field. And that's something that kind of stood out to me, because I'm saying that he wasn't a person who was born on the other side of the street. He had 6 siblings. His mother, his father didn't finish high school. But you know what? They passed the baton, and he did finish, all right? He did go on to college. He did go on to be a district court judge. He did go on to be a superior court judge. So I'm saying I want the young people, and I want the parents and grandparents to tell their kids, that we don't need to look far for role models. Judge Cole's daughter didn't have to look outside. They didn't have to look to the NBA. They didn't have to look to the NFL for role models. The role models was right at home. So we're asking you to also try to be role models for your kids. Remember, this is Around Town with Hez Brown, and you can hear us on the first and third Wednesday at 6:30 on 89.9 FM. Again on Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Dr. Brown, if you don't mind, I forgot to give a shout out for WRVS 89.9, which is one of the truly great resources of our community.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Around the Town with Hez Brown, recorded and produced at WRVS-FM Studios on the campus of Elizabeth City State University. If you are interested in becoming an underwriter for this show, call 252-335-3985.